Thank you so very much, Mr. Taha Mohammed, for setting the tone for the day. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, now it's time to introduce the first keynote session for the day. It's time to navigate the business landscape of Qatar, to identify the key opportunities, address challenges, and rise above 2025 with insights from one of the most distinguished leaders in Qatar's business landscape. Well, as the Chief Executive Officer for Baker Tilly in Qatar and the head of Baker Tilly Consulting in the Middle East region, Mr. Rajesh Menon is considered as one of the most prominent voices in the business diaspora in the region and beyond. I would also like to add he's the only Indian national to have been recognized as a part of the board of member and the audit committee chairperson for two of the public listed companies in the Qatar Stock Exchange. With a great expertise in strategy, governance, he comes with a wealth of knowledge in various senior leadership roles inclusive of KPMG. And today, he's all set, he's all ready to share his expertise, knowledge, perspective, and insights with us as a part of his keynote address. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please put your hands together as we welcome on stage our first keynote speaker, Mr. Rajesh Menon.
Can you hear me very well at the back? First of all, good evening, and I apologize. We are behind time, and I apologize for the delay. We were scheduled to start at 6:45 or so, but unfortunately, because of the traffic and also because of slightly lengthy introductions, we are slightly behind time, but we'll try and catch up. We should try and finish by 9-ish so that we don't keep you waiting. We just come to the presentation. So the scene is set. I mean, we've heard it's probably the best time that we are convening here to talk about opportunities and challenges, especially for the business that operate here. And the context is also pretty clear. We are talking about opportunities and challenges of different size and scale of business Indian community, Indian businessmen operate. And when I say Indian businessmen or Indian business, automatically that connotation means Qatari business, because every single Indian business has got a Qatari partnership. So I don't think speaking in isolation to say that it's an Indian business would be a wrong connotation. It is a business which is the Qatari business and businesses that operate in Qatar. So let's set some context. We need to know the country that we are operating in. And I have to tell you that every single business, every single opportunity that we see here, every single business that we do here, we're in a country which is one of the most advanced, prosperous, competitive economy that we have. And I'll tell you, with some of the statistics, most of you would know what what Qatar stands for. So since 1942, when oil was discovered first in the Dukan field, Qatar has been a dominant player in the energy market. Right at the top, you'll see we have the third largest gas reserve. We are in the top 3 exporters of liquefied natural gas. The economy of Qatar has steadily grown. As you would see, the gross domestic production, which is the GDP, has grown from 705 billion Qatari riyal, and it's poised to go to 849 billion. You also would see the spike of 26 and 27 on account of the commercialization of the North Field production, which is actually giving you that spike which you see in 26 and 27 as the North Field gas comes on stream. The economy is poised to grow at 4%, which is the GDP growth is projected to be at 4%. Non-hydrocarbon economy is poised to grow at 4%. So the real challenge, or the challenge that we have in front of us as contributors to this economy is how do we make the non-hydrocarbon economy grow? And that's one of the key drivers for the government as well, government of Qatar. These are other statistics, as you would see. The non-hydrocarbon today contributes 64%, which is a significant part of the economy and continuing to grow, and the challenge is to get this growing. All the other statistics, we have a fiscal surplus, we have a current account surplus, all in percentage terms, we have 2% of the GDP, which is the fiscal surplus, and a 13% surplus, which is the current account surplus as a percentage of GDP. In terms of all the other ratings, Qatar rates itself as one of the best healthcare providers in the MENA region. It ranks third in the travel and transit rankings. It has got a credit rating of AA, which goes to show the stable or the very stable economy that Qatar is built on. Another important aspect to understand is the strength of the Qatar Sovereign Wealth Fund. Qatar Sovereign Wealth Fund is one of the top 10 sovereign wealth funds in the world. A very active sovereign wealth fund with a total asset of around 500 billion. This particular aspect or these details are meant to give a picture of what Qatar stands for, its economy, and also the positive outlook of the Qatar economy. Since the topic is about challenges, it's important that we take a look at some of the key challenges or the macro challenges that the state of Qatar is faced with, or some of the macro challenges that every business that operates is faced with. Growth of non-hydrocarbon economy, as I mentioned, the hydrocarbon economy has been the kicker ever since the gas exports have taken a rise. Our hydrocarbon economy has led the way, and all the government spending has happened on the back of that hydrocarbon economy, which still underpins our Qatar's economy. Now, growing the non-hydrocarbon economy is one of the major challenges that the government is faced with. And you will see, as I continue with this, you will see the Qatar National Development Strategy. Qatar National Development Strategy 3, which is now operational, the one which is now functional, is the Qatar National Development Strategy 3, which is the third edition of the Qatar National Vision 2030. Qatar National Development Strategy of the third edition points out to one major thing, which is about shifting from a government spend economy or a government-led economy to a non-hydrocarbon sector economy. And that is where the NDS 3 has spelled out very clearly what are the sectors that we will be focused on. The next challenge that we are faced with is the private sector participation. There are considerable challenges when it comes to private sector participation. One is the scale itself. One is the depth of the private sector institutions here. So the government is looking every single possibility to engage private sector, continue to bring them into every single provision of services that currently is made public. So everything that you look at today, there's an urge to actually bring private sector participation into the economy. Private sector, you would definitely hear the other challenge that we are faced with is the access to funds. When I say access to funds, this has got both debt as well as equity. And again, every single measure, and we have the board member from Mr. Mohammed from QDB will talk about the initiatives that the government is taking to actually make funds available through QDB and various other means into this private sector to flourish. other thing which we are faced with is a low-wage business model. When I say a low-wage business model, the economy is striving to move from a low-wage business model to a high-value jobs, high-value sectors, where you're going to see a lot more of skilled and highly skilled workers actually dominating the economic space. And that is the shift that the government is looking to bring and continues to be a challenge for the government to actually address. There are, and one of the biggest barriers that we have today, or one of the challenges, is the business environment. And I talk about business environment as a challenge because it's the ease of doing business or the speed at which and the complexities which are involved. You will see red tape. Red tape is part of every other business institution or government institution, but Qatar is determined to actually bring a lot more progress in the way the business is conducted by the government, and especially the government to business. The G2B services is something which the government is very much focused on improving the government services. So, and I would also say there are initiatives to actually make the very clear targets when it comes to foreign direct investment. So let me just take you quickly to the Qatar National Development Strategy. Qatar National Development Strategy, as I said, it's the third edition of the Qatar National Development Strategy. Very clear as to what is expected to achieve. We have 7 national themes. We have 7 national themes that the Qatar is looking to achieve as part of QNDS 3. Starts with sustainable economic growth. When I say sustainable economic growth, Qatar is looking to set itself up as an economically diversified, competitive, productive, innovative economy. That is exactly what the sustainable economic growth is meant to do. And economic diversification is something which the sustainable growth, or the first national outcome, is set for. What are the KPIs? We are, as I said, the KPI set for the first national outcome is a 4%, and when I talk about NDS 3, it started in 2024 and goes all the way till 2030. We're looking at a GDP growth of 4%. We're looking at non-hydrocarbon also growing at 4%. We're looking at a gross R&D expenditure, again, which will actually drive innovation. It's going to be 1.5% of the GDP, pretty much doubling the R&D expenditure in the country. The labor productivity, which is another issue, with the labor productivity comes with more skilled labor coming into the marketplace, is expected to grow at 2%. Cumulative FDI, the foreign direct investment, we're looking at attracting a foreign direct investment of $100 billion. And what the government is trying to do here, and made it explicit, is the money has to come to drive the private sector. While the government will actually create the playing field, the government will actually create the infrastructure for private sector to flourish, they are expecting that foreign direct investments will come in, which will actually drive the private sector growth. And that's the way the economy wishes to progress. And it also creates opportunities. As I said, business environment, especially dealing with the complexities of government to business services, exactly in the investor journey. Throughout the business life cycle, the investor journey, it needs to be streamlined, and that is what the government is aspiring to do, to actually come to actually be in the top 10 in the business environment. So these are aspirational targets. No doubt these are not easy to achieve, but as Indian businesses, we also have a role to contribute to actually achieving these KPIs. There are 6 other national outcomes, which is the fiscal sustainability, As we said, we have a fiscal surplus budget, which is pretty uncommon in today's world. Every company runs on every nation runs on a deficit budget. So fiscal sustainability is about the long-term stability of the budget, government budget, and government balance sheet. It's the long-term stability. Future-ready workforce, it's all about creating a highly skilled national workforce who are globally competitive and also attracting highly skilled expat workforce. Cohesive society is about fostering or continuing with, or developing the Qatari values, as well as integrating communities and societies, which are the expat communities, into this fabric. Quality of life, as I said, in terms of quality of life, Qatar ranks in the top 10. We are looking at continuing to invest in healthcare and public safety, becomes the two of the biggest themes in that quality of life. Environmental sustainability, it's all about reducing carbon emissions, reducing greenhouse emissions, and looking at more green energy, and looking at decarbonizing and creating a cleaner environment. Government excellence, it is about improving the way the government supports the citizens and businesses. So these are 7 national outcomes that the government has set itself up for a 2030 deadline. And today, most of our discussion will center around the first national outcome, which is sustainable growth. Sustainable economic growth is what we will talk about, because that's a matter of interest for all of us, as to how sustainable economic growth, and I would like all of you to understand what the KPIs the government has set. Possible to go there. So the sustainable economic growth is driven by 4 themes. It's driven by, the first theme is your diversification cluster, economic diversification clusters which have been identified. There are 4 clusters through which government wants to drive economic growth. The reason why it's important to understand this is because if you look at, it's not just about on paper. Every action that has been initiated actually underpins what is there in the NDAs. If you look at the latest QIA fund, which is the fund of funds which have been introduced, it supports the 2 major sectors which is part of your NDAs, which is your technology and healthcare. If you look at QDB's support for fintech, again a fund of fund, it supports financial services, which is about fintech. So everything ties back very well into what NDS 3 has asked us, is asking the machinery to look at. So I would really know, personally, my reading is that everything that is being done with a purpose, is done, with a direction. And the direction is NDS 3. We are looking at the growth, so as I said, economic diversification. You start with the diversification cluster, we got the growth cluster. Under growth cluster, we have 3 clusters which the government has identified. We are looking at logistics, manufacturing, and we are looking at tourism. These are the 3 growth clusters that government have identified. And I'll come to that in a minute. Enabling clusters, the one which will enable the economy to get to economic diversification. We're talking about the enabling sectors. It's the IT and digital, education, and financial services. Resilience cluster, we're talking about food and agriculture, and we're talking about healthcare. Future clusters, which are very futuristic in nature, we're talking about green technologies. So these are the 4 clusters which have been spelled out in the 2030 in the Qatar National Development Strategy, third edition, which is driving this country forward. Second theme of sustainable growth is about energy. When I say energy, the themes that they are looking at is consolidating their dominant position in the energy sector. Continue to dominate the energy sector. We're talking about the North Field expansion coming on stream. We're talking about the natural gas, liquefied natural gas production, the natural gas production moving from 80 million tons to 140 million tons as the North Field expansion comes on stream. So this is a very, very important milestone for the government in 26 and 27 as NDS 3 moves forward. Other important theme is the low energy. It's about green energy initiatives. We're talking about possibly standing here in next 10 years, you would possibly be looking at Qatar being pioneering your green hydrogen. Green ammonia plant is very much in the works. So we're talking about a lot of green initiatives which is in the energy sector. On the innovation side, we'll see a lot more, but Qatar wants to be in the top 30 global innovation index. And the amount of money, as you would have heard in the recent press releases in the press, as well as the commitment given by the government, $2.5 billion has been allocated to be spent on artificial intelligence. Qatar is driving the agenda of artificial intelligence. We have been privy to one of those because we were part of an engagement where we actually developed the digital economy strategy of the country, and currently are also part of an initiative to develop the IoT strategy of the country. You can understand the amount of emphasis the government is giving on driving innovation and driving innovation through technology. Business environment, as I said, we do have challenges. We do have challenges and that needs to be understood. We have a case. I mean, I'm talking about the time it takes to actually bring a business on track. While we talk about all the great, things, all the good KPIs, the great KPIs at the macro level, micro level, we do have challenges on the ground. And I'll tell you an example where we need to be cognizant of. A project that was awarded a year and a half ago, and that too with the support of Qatar Energy and all the, I would say the who's who machinery of the country, has still taken 1.5 years to actually come on stream. So we do have challenges and which the government acknowledges. So the business, the business environment we are talking about is to clear up those hurdles that the businessmen are faced with, which is to create an environment where the investor journey is a lot more easy. Very quickly, as I said, you have growth cluster with very clear KPIs. We have enabling sectors, resilience sector, and future clusters. These 4 clusters where we spot opportunities. And I would like to tell the Indian business community, this is the direction. And this is the direction where opportunities are. And the government is driving opportunities. So if you were to pick an opportunity as to where you would want to invest your finite capital, you have to pick your sweet spot. And I have to say the sweet spot lies somewhere in this. If you look at another business opportunity to invest your capital, probably it is not in I would say, it's not presently in the sweet spot. And you can also see, I just want to bring to you, and this is not a coincidence, by the way. All these cluster growths, etc., that we are talking about has been the hard work of the government to develop these sectors over time. And these sectors have grown. If you look at the sectors, sorry, I probably actually, when I said the growth cluster, if you look at the logistics sector, yes, there are challenges in the logistics sector because the scale always comes into an issue. Qatar being a smaller country, yes, there is an issue of scale, but the amount of growth that we have seen, especially on the back of the air transport cargo, we're talking about a 54% rise. Yes, do we have challenges? If you speak to the GWC CEO, he will tell you, yes, there are challenges. But are there sweet spots? I'll tell you where they are. So for us, I don't know whether the color coding, we look at it more from a growth and a government spending. If you were to cut the slice, again, this is our analysis, this is our a pick. You may have a slightly different view on it because these are not, there on any other paper. So I would say we would pick the three most recommended sectors, highly recommended sectors, would be IT and digital, financial services, healthcare. The reason being, not because they are in the scheme of things of NDS, but these are sectors where there is also the 2025 budgetary commitment is also reinforcing the direction in which this government wants to take this play forward. If you look at the IT and digital, as I said, government has announced a $2.5 billion investment in the AI spectrum. Financial services, we got some gurus of financial services in this room, but I have to say, moving away, financial services, the government is actually looking at consolidating. Ajay would know better, but even consolidating Qatar position as an asset manager, bringing asset under management to exceed 100 billion in Qatar. So that's one part of the financial services. But the emphasis again goes back and ties back to fintechs. And I can tell you the opportunity is enormous. The work which is being done by Qatar Research Institute, Qatar QDRI, the work that is being put in by other government institutions to drive, including MCIT, to drive the agenda. And I think I'll ask Bara a lot more questions at the session, but you can see the amount of opportunities that is being created. Qatar wants to be seen as the place where we're going to revolutionize with at least 5 to 6 use cases that will disrupt the economy. And that's what is driving. So it's not just about an AI revolution. Qatar has very clear ambition to create use cases that becomes a global disruptor. And they are looking at global partnerships. And as a hub for technology, what we need to look at is what is the global partnership that we can bring from India to Qatar to drive home this agenda of technology and digital. So this is how our pick of the sectors look like. So we're talking about IT and digital, financial services, healthcare, logistics, and manufacturing. And I'll talk a little bit about each of the sector as to what are the sub-opportunities that we spot within each of the sector. AI and digital. Qatar wants to be the global AI innovation hub. I know it's not easy. There are much larger countries competing, but the vision and the intent is very clear to be at least, and if you talk about it privately, I would gauge that Qatar wants to be seen as the one that has given us 5 or 6 use cases that has revolutionized the AI industry. And that's the partnership they are seeking. One case which is very clear is the InsurTech. And this has been spelled out very clearly. InsurTech is a fintech they would like to use or create using AI and other disruptive technologies to drive the insurance industry or disrupt the insurance industry, where insurance products will get priced better, the risk would be assessed, claims would be processed, all with much more precision. We believe this is a top opportunity as it stands today in the country, which is the AI and digital. And these are some of it are personal views, and you might have differing views in this room. But if you were to pick an opportunity today, we would say AI and digital is a top opportunity that institutions or businesses should look at. No, just one back. Yeah, one back. One more. Now, I want to talk about fintech. Qatar is looking to incubate and successfully bring out 35 fintechs by 2030, and you could be one of them. When I say fintech, you have enormous opportunities in different areas. And some of the areas that we pick is the digital and payment arena. We talked about UPI being accepted, and we have the privilege of having Mr. Mohammed here, who actually was one of the pioneers. He set up, is a founder of Skip Cash, which is a digital payment platform, and also a co-founder of Pay Later, which is a BNPL, which is, if you are aware of a concept called embedded finance. Embedded finance is, I'll come to that in a minute, but we believe digital and contactless payment provides a great opportunity. Yes, again, as I said, scale becomes an issue because of the smaller size of the economy. You might have seen as to how the UPI has taken off in India. It has driven India's growth. It is the soft power that we have. And today, if you look at it, we currently do not have a wallet, a digital wallet, which goes from P2P, which is the peer-to-peer payments, and also business to business. Only on I'm talking more about other than the likes of Orido wallet and Vodafone wallets. We still have a huge opportunity lying there in the payment space to be the digital wallet, just like what we have in India, the Google Pays and the Paytms and all of that. We're looking at an opportunity, but again, as I said, scale is an issue, and it is something which we need to be able to export it to the nearest countries. But it is coming. It is obviously, it's a regulated industry. It comes with certain amount of restrictions, but that's a huge opportunity as we see it. Open banking solution. We are talking about open banking solution as we speak. I am working on a project in Bahrain, setting up an open bank in Bahrain. And if you know this concept of open bank, it allows, banks are pretty precious about their data. But today, open banking is asking them to open up their data and to be made available to consumers or third parties and users with a fintech or a middleware in between. So you could still use that for payments, you could use that for information making and decision making. And that's something which is coming, it's not too far off. We're talking about embedded finance. Embedded finance is going to be, without which there is, and I don't know how many of you would know, embedded finance stands for bringing in finance into non-financial services. It means as you do in a non-financial services, let's say I am buying from a company, I'm buying and I buy, let's say, an airline ticket. All of a sudden, it comes up, there's a pop-up which says, do you wish to buy an insurance? That is an embedded finance. because you are embedding a financial transaction in a non-core financial transaction. And who's bringing that? There's a fintech in action behind this. In general, and that's an opportunity space for the fintech. You're talking about a BNPL, buy now, pay later. You would have heard that concept. As you check out from an e-commerce store, you actually are asked, do you want to pay in installments? What is driving that? What is driving is an institution. Yes, if you want to take on risk on your balance sheet, if you want to give credit, you got to have a bank behind you. But between a bank and between an e-commerce, you have an intermediary, which is a fintech, which actually takes on that risk, buys out that risk, takes on that risk and passes on to the bank. So there are different business models, there are different use cases. But BNPL, I mean, there's a huge opportunity which we see in a B2B business model. B2B business model, I buy and sell, you buy and sell. Today, you actually go and give post-dated checks. BNPL in a B2B context takes this completely out of the picture. A BNPL will actually give you an opportunity to pay and pay later. But in between, the fintech or the middleware, whatever you want to call it, actually shift that risk onto another balance sheet, which you are not seeing. And these models are emerging. And this embedded finance is here to stay in many ways. You could have your own credit card. You know, as Baker Tilly, I could have my own credit card today. And I could make offers to say, you pay through my card, I'll give you a 5% discount. And behind that is a financial intermediary working with the bank to make that happen. So I'm saying it is an enormous opportunity, an endless opportunity to be explored in a market. As you would see, so I would say in our top picks, we will say digital. When I say digital, AI and fintech would rank as a seriously big opportunity. We're talking about healthcare, the traditional healthcare, but there are opportunities that we see within the healthcare because the healthcare spending continues to be on the rise and will continue to stay there. We're looking at specialty clinics, we're looking at medical devices and personal protective equipment, physiotherapy, preventive care, post-hospitalization and home care. We think these are the 5 picks in the healthcare sector which could actually give us opportunities for businesses of our size and scale which the Indian businesses operate here. And also, healthcare technologies that will revolutionize the way the healthcare is run in the country. So in healthcare, so in the ranking, we would put this on on the 3rd position, which is the healthcare opportunity. The next one, please. The 4th one, logistics. Again, a big opportunity. It's a big area, and with different parts. Within the value chain, you have different parts of it, which is warehousing, last mile delivery. You have many sub-segments within the logistics. But here we're talking about a lot more, which is the re-export market. The government is targeting to build a re-export hub, especially targeting pharmaceuticals. And when I speak to some of the best or the leading operators in logistics, they say there's a clear opportunity in the cold infrastructure. The cold infrastructure, which is your freezer and the chiller space, there is an opportunity for SMEs. If you were to look at, if you are in the logistics sector, currently there's a growing opportunity in the chiller and freezer space, which is in the cold infrastructure. There is an opportunity in the e-commerce last mile to actually improve the way e-commerce last mile is delivered. There's an opportunity clearly emerging in that segment. So you can see the way this has grown for Qatar. Obviously, I would say stay away from warehousing. Warehousing is not an area you want to go anywhere near to because we have excess capacity built. Even whether it is DWC or for that matter, we have an awful lot of capacity which is surplus. So you might be better off keeping away from warehousing. But these are 2 or 3 opportunities in logistics that actually you can make it count. Manufacturing, and if you look at the Indian businesses which have really made it big here, who make money when they sleep, is the manufacturers. And Qatar still, because of, the important opportunity that we spot here is the low carbon metal recycling. Again, driven by the NDAs, which is part of the circular economy theme. We're looking at the low metal recycling, which is in the areas of aluminum, steel, copper, lead. Obviously, there are challenges and you need to study this before anybody ventures into it because raw material is a constraint for all of this because of the amount of recycling that can be done, and buying from outside or importing raw material doesn't make this industry very viable. So obviously there is a challenge when it comes to raw material which needs to be kept in consideration. Chemicals, chemical industry, especially chloralkali part of it. We know an Indian business which is actually more than few businesses have won sodium chloride. Al-Kauthar was recently awarded the project to build a sodium chloride plant in Qatar. So there are opportunities which is driven by the Tauteen scheme, which is actually bringing these Qatar energy because the feedstock is available. Every single opportunity that we are talking about is driven by, obviously there is a bigger challenge. If the government actually makes the power tariffs more affordable, you can see the manufacturing really taking off. The power tariff here, still compared to other GCC countries, is a lot more expensive. A unit of power costs 0.13 Riyal as compared to 0.03 in Kuwait. So if we were to make it a lot more competitive, I can say we would still have a much more thriving manufacturing industry here. The other one which has got an enormous, which is growing and has potential is the plastic subcluster. Again, because of the feedstock is a petrochemical feedstock, and the plastic subcluster is an identified opportunity for the government as well. And we are aware of Indian businesses doing extremely well in that area. So I would say if we were to recap again, on the last one, I don't know if there is another one. Is there a next one? Okay, so if I were to recap the opportunity sector or the opportunity spectrum, I would rank AI and the digital and the digital part, the technology part, especially AI, innovation-led AI technology, the financial services led by fintech opportunity, more importantly looking at embedded finance, not just as a business, but also incorporating embedded business into your business to drive home efficiency and also your growth. The second, the third one being the healthcare because of the continuous spend that you receive in the healthcare. And the last one, we talked about logistics, very specific opportunities in logistics, and the last one being manufacturing. So these are our 5 top picks of the industries where opportunities are clear and there are opportunities for us as Indian businesses to actually target. Now, having said that, we spoke about the opportunity landscape and the building block being the Qatar National Development Strategy 3, because it spells out where the opportunities are, which clusters are the focus areas. We move on to the next one, which are the challenges. And these are real challenges. I mean, there are a lot of practitioners in the room. I can see, people who actually do audit consulting work. I can see Gopal here, I can see Venkat here, and many others who actually do consulting and audit work. We will come across these themes on a daily basis. And sorry, Ahmed is here who would possibly be also hearing the same theme, Sebastian, so I think the number is growing. But, none of us would, every single, just go back to the earlier slide, please. Yeah. So here is a common theme, every SME. And I always feel, and this theme you hear for companies which are relatively small scale, who has not been able to scale, and when I say scale, I'm talking about companies which are less than 100 million annual turnover. And I always feel it's like, you're in one orbit, and you're all planets in the same orbit, so your problems are also the same. When you leave that orbit and move to the next orbit, your problems are slightly different. I'm talking about the planets in the same orbit, which is the SME segment, and I'm talking about when I say 100 million and less, and I'm talking about possibly even lower numbers. These are issues that they grapple with on a daily basis. We're talking about scalability. Yes, scale because of the size of the economy, margin pressures, access to fund, profitability, limited portfolio diversification, market size being again small, not being able to price because of competition and the need to stay in the business, you compromise, and it's a vicious cycle. There's an absolute vicious cycle that we hear about, cash strapped, they just don't have the money to roll, banks are not funding because your balance sheet doesn't allow the banks to fund, and so on and so forth. So this is a set of problems that we look at every single business on every single day. There is no single, silver bullet solution to it. All we are trying to give, or all we want to discuss today, is how do we actually support this businesses which are, and let's put it this way, SME is the backbone of every economy. Without SMEs, there is no economy, be it in Qatar, be it in India, be it anywhere. So sustainability of SMEs is an absolutely important part of every single economy. Now, how do we make these businesses which are pretty much, in the struggle mode? And I have to say a lot of these companies are in that mode. One of the ways we have to look at is how a private equity would look at. As how a private equity lens is a ruthless lens. Absolutely ruthless, they don't care a damn. There's no emotion. A lot of our businesses actually get, sorry to say, screwed up because of emotions. A private equity lens actually takes out emotions from that. They are only focused on three things. They are focused on revenue growth, they are focused on EBITDA maximization, and they are focused on exit potential. There is nothing below that. There's no friendship, there's no love between anyone. There's absolute no emotion. Now, that's something which every single business has to look at. In our view, a lot of the businesses struggle because not taking decisive actions. Not taking decisive actions at the right time lead to more problems, and it comes to a point where it's breaking or it's broken. Next slide, please. In our view, and I put together a few decisive actions, which I would have told my clients. I'm sure some of the knowledgeable people in this room would know, but it's for all of our benefit that I want to reiterate some of these decisive actions. One is, in our experience, unless you have gone through a very professional method of looking at cost optimization, Our view is at any given point in time, every business has got 20% fat. Every business has got 20% fat which you can take out. If you go through a private equity ruthless way of cost optimization, you have a 20%. And that 20% is the difference between staying in the business or exiting or breaking. And that 20% needs to be identified and dealt with. And I've given some steps as to how you could look at, but there's no rocket science here. But it's about following them in a methodical manner. You look at your operational processes, there is fat sitting there, and you need a thorough technical due diligence. People who understand the process, who can actually drive that, streamlining. We have seen how effectively some of the small and medium enterprises have actually saved costs by using RPA, robotic process automation. It sounds like, it's a killer, but in fact, it drives home efficiency and it actually optimizes cost in a big way. We have worked on projects in Qatar and it has yielded results. RPA actually automates your repetitive task. You have 5 people in finance just reconciling your invoices. So let's say our famous, if you're an accountant, you would know the 3-way matching, which is a huge thing in accounts. For RPA, it's a walk in the park. They don't get it wrong. Even if there are 5 clerks looking at it, we generally get it wrong. So I'm talking about how you can automate repetitive tasks using RPA. And you need to consider bringing that because 1, it's economical, and 1, it gives you long-term tangible cost saving. Right-sizing the workforce. Again, it's about improving the productivity. We talk about how do you actually drive home. And one of the factors which have been talked about in this country is labor productivity. Is every single employee in your organization productive? If not, what actions are you taking? You are letting things drift. And as a result, it's money. It's actually hitting your bottom line. It's about upskilling. A lot of it is about upskilling because you can actually, it's wrong to say that this guy doesn't know this. Every single guy can be upskilled. Because if you come from a training, if you give them the right training, you can actually upskill and right-size the workforce. I mean, there are some obvious things to do, but if you do this in a methodical manner, which a private equity does and get the result, it's because they do it. A lot of the businesses, they just don't do it. So they just don't enjoy the benefit of that cost optimization. Second one, please. We look at another concept, a decisive action, number 2. Identify your business more from a value destructor or a value creator. Every business, each of you might be running a business or involved in a business in different capacity, but the most important thing to ask is your business a value creator or a value destructor? And what is the 2 symbol or the kind of 2 litmus tests you can apply to actually identify whether it's a creator or a destructor? I would suggest there are 2 things. Do your intrinsic value assessment of your business. If your intrinsic value is not giving you the positive result, you have to relook at what you do with that business. Second part, when I say intrinsic value, you actually look at your net present value of your future cash flows for a foreseeable future. And if you don't see a positive result, you got to take this into account that you're working on a business which is not going to yield you results and is going to drive you into trouble very soon. How many of you would have done this exercise very methodically in assessing whether your business is actually creating value or destroying value? And this could be a business division, because a lot of your problem is because you have 2 performing units and 1 non-performing unit which is eating into your profits. Second is your long-term assessment of the quality of earning. Quality of earning is what determines the stability, long-term stability of your business model. Long-term stability of your business model, which means how recurring is your revenue. Is it actually built on short-term gains? Is it built on short-term activity? No. If you can see that the quality of money that you make is a long-termish thing, then rest be assured you are actually sitting on a very sound business model. But you can't see this revenue after 12 months, then, I mean, if you were to give this to a private equity, he would obviously dismiss it immediately, because he would look at it more from a quality of earning, not just the quantity of earning. Action number 3, I would say one of the issues that we are normally faced with is how do I raise growth capital? And there are 2 ways we can do that. One is the partial sale of equity and one is an IPO. And we'll talk more about it. A partial sale of equity allows you to raise capital to drive growth agenda. IPO, we'll talk about that in a minute, how we can use that as a lever. But obviously, there's a journey to be had. And I don't want to talk more about it because we have a panel session coming up where we will speak more about how the listing process happens in Qatar specifically, and what is it that you need to build as your equity story before which you can talk about it. So I think one of the things which you should keep in mind is the option of divesting a partial equity sale. And we have, and as consultants sitting in this room, we have several mandates. Each of us have several mandates to raise equity or partial sale of equity to be done to raise growth capital. And this is not even cashing out. We're talking about actually taking money into the business to grow the business, where the founders or the promoters are actually willing to sacrifice their promoter capital to actually fund the growth capital. On to the next, please. Yeah. This is our opinion. Scalability has always been a problem because businesses, the fringe businesses, actually suffer because of scale. Our view is any business that you are looking at in Qatar, you got to be looking at a business that you can actually lift and drop into 3 minimum markets, a minimum of 3 markets, because it is going to catch up, because you will hit the ceiling very soon and you don't know where to go. So unless you have planned in advance for a geographical expansion into 3 markets at a minimum, you are possibly running into a brick wall very soon, because the scale is an issue. And I'm talking about the scalability issue which every business is faced with. And I want to give you a benchmark. You can hold me for this, but our own analysis of various businesses, and there are clear outliers in it. And we give you, and this is just a benchmark for you to evaluate. We believe, and there are some serious outliers in this business, for example, a retail. So I'm going to give you a financial benchmark that you possibly can apply and see where your business stands. And I again say this with a pinch of caution, because every business, there are businesses which are clear outliers and you need to suitably adopt it. But a sweet spot of a gross, because these are financial benchmarks that will help you. A gross margin of 43% is something which you possibly need to look at in your business. You need to know that operating in Qatar has a certain cost. And if you evaluate the SME businesses, which we have done, your average overheads range somewhere in between 22 to 25%. 22 to 25% of your revenue. So unless you earn enough gross margins, you will not be able to give yourself a reasonable, respectable EBITDA and a net margin. So we're looking at a 43, 22 to 25, EBITDA hovering around 18, and an NP of anything between 12 to 15%. That is your business achieving? Or is it possible that you can drive this result? It's something which you can apply to your business and see where you stand. But I still, again, as I say with a lot of caution, retail business doesn't give you, so there's a clear outlier there for retail. It gives you a 30% gross margin and net profit of 3, but it's a huge volume business. So there's a way to adapt these numbers to yours, but I'm talking about a lot of generic businesses that you can apply. And I'm again talking about the SME businesses are a lot of our countrymen actually do here. I would say, what's your natural hedge? Your natural hedge is to partner with an established Qatari group. This is our recommendation. Never try on your own. It is always best that you actually create an alliance with an established business group. One, it takes care of another problem, which is your ability to access debt capital, which is another major issue for our businesses here. Not being able to access debt from financial institutions, because none of us have collaterals to offer, and many of the balance sheets do not have the track record to actually get the debt. So the only way that you can, through your, during your trying times, is only if you have partnered with an established business group. And this is our recommendation, that you look at it as a clear way, as a natural hedge to some of the risks that you faced with in the country. We hear on a daily basis the businesses that go down on a daily basis. We talk about businesses which are more targeting the masses, the society. We talk about restaurant business. Indian businesses, if you look at it, there's one restaurant that closes every month. One Indian restaurant is closing every month in this country, and we still open. So, there has to be a manner and method for madness also. And knowing that there is no space in it, unless you are able to bring in a differentiation or pricing which is completely, which is going to put you in the business. So, it is the crowded business, the businesses which are crowded, where there is more supply than demand. We continue to actually go and put our precious capital into it, and then we come back burning our fingers. And that's an advice to look at, to say, where do you actually put your money? You're better off not doing anything rather than losing that money. The last one. So the last one, which is the final one for my presentation as well, is the big decision, which is to close down a business, which we shy away from doing. And we have many reasons. We find so many biases not to do it. And we prolong this agony forever and ever till some of us end up in jail, and some of us are actually broken to a point where you don't even have a property back home. We sell everything. Even then we don't give up. So the important thing is to realize that you can also close the business down. And making that decision at the right time can save a lot of problems and also allow you to think afresh and start. So I think these are some of the decisive actions in response to the challenges that we have seen. And these are some of, these are our views, and many of it is my personal view. So you might have a differing view, but I will allow this forum and this session, the latter part of the session, to actually discuss what we have discussed now. Thank you very much. That's it from my side. And in the next few minutes, we will start the panel discussion, and we'll try and see how fast we can wrap up. Thank you.
Thanks, Rajesh. May I kindly request you to please stay back for a minute?
Okay.
Well, thank you so very much, Mr. Rajesh, for such an insightful and detailed presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, yet again, could you please give him a big round of applause? Well, Mr. Menon is certainly one of the most prominent voices in Qatar's and in the region's business diaspora. And what makes every Indian proud here is he's the only Indian national to have been recognized, to have been a part of the independent board member and the audit committee chairman for two of the public listed companies in Qatar Stock Exchange. Now this again is a great moment for the entire Indian community in Qatar. Acknowledging his contributions and expertise that he brings onto the table, the organizing committee would like to honor him with a token of appreciation. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome on stage our dignitaries as a part of our esteemed panel, Mr. Mohammad Abdul Aziz Al-Dalaimi, to kindly join us onto the stage as we honor Mr. Rajesh Menon for his contributions. We would also like to acknowledge the kind presence of Mr. Ahmed Rashid Al-Musafri. We would also like to request the kind presence of Mr. Taha Muhammad, Mr. Mashood VC, Mr. A.C.K. Musa, the General Secretary of DOM Qatar. We would also like to request the kind presence of Mr. Abdul Rashid PP, the Acting President of DOM Qatar. We would also like to request the kind presence of Mr. Vitesh Panami, the Treasurer of Diaspora of Malappuram. We would also like to request the kind presence of Mr. Achu Ullatil, the Chief Patron for Diaspora of Malappuram, Qatar. We would also like to request the kind presence of Ms. Nabsha Mujib, the Vice President for DOM Qatar, and also Ms. Preeti Sridhar, the President for DOM Qatar Ladies, that is Diaspora of Malappuram. Dignitaries, could you please join us onto the stage as we acknowledge the contribution of Mr. Rajesh Menon that he has done for the community and people here in Qatar and beyond. Keep the applauses going for the remarkable work done by this amazing gentleman. Many congratulations, Mr. Rajesh, and thank you to the entire team. Thank you. Thank you.